Hello everybody, welcome to the CSS3 course. This video is going to talk about the selectors that can help us identify the elements that are going to be decorated by means of the CSS format. So suppose I have such an HTML file that outputs this kind of web page. So now I would like to demonstrate many types of selectors by using this web page. So I would like to demonstrate the selectors in a number of categories. For example, the element selectors, ID selectors, class selectors, and attribute selectors. And before I demonstrate these selectors, I would like to introduce one selector called universal selector. Okay, what does it mean by an universal selector? It just means that the selector is going to choose every single element that is shown on the HTML file. So how can I do that? I can do something like this as a demonstration. Okay, when I set the text color to be blue, I'm able to see all the characters on the web page to be turned to blue. So that means that when I simply put an asterisk before the opening curly brace, I'm able to select every single element that is present in the body element. Okay, so you can see that all the letters are turned to blue by means of the universal selector. And then I'm going to show you the element selector. So I will have one example. Okay, so what does it mean by the element selector here? When I just input the element which is h1, I'm going to set the font size of each h1 element inside my HTML file to be having 48 pixels as the font size. So for my HTML file, I have one h1 heading. So I would have one heading to be set as 48 pixels, and it does not affect other elements because this effect is only applicable to h1 elements. Okay. When we want to change the outlook of some elements, we don't always need to set up the selectors element by element. Actually, we can also group multiple element selectors to apply the same style. So how can we do that? I can do something like this here. Okay, here I would like to set up both H1 and P elements to have the font color being magenta. So we can check the web page on the right hand side. So we can see the P elements together with H1 elements are now turned to magenta, and other parts being not H1 or P elements will still remain to be blue because this is the setting provided by the universal selector. So we can see one important property by means of this example. We can see that the latest style present in the CSS file would override the previous style. So for the font color example here, magenta will be able to override blue if these two elements are required to set to another color. And these lines of code appear later than the universal selector. So we can say that the latest style mentioned on the CSS file is able to override the previous style on the earlier part of the CSS file. So I can show you one more example for this situation. Okay, you can see that the font color for the paragraph elements are now turned to tomato. That means the tomato color is even able to override the magenta color set previously in these lines of code. So this example also demonstrates the later styles are able to override the previous styles mentioned on the same CSS file. After that, I would like to identify the ID selectors to you. An ID selector is something like this. When we want to set up an ID for your HTML file, you have to notice that the ID is unique throughout the entire HTML file. It cannot be shared among other elements of the same HTML document. So suppose I would like to set up the unordered list like this, and I would like to set up the ID for this unordered list element. And if I want to change the outlook of my unordered list, I would like to specify the ID on my CSS file. How can I do that? I can do something on the CSS file as follows. Okay, I'm able to identify the ID by using the hash character followed by the ID name. Okay, so now I'm able to set the list style type from solid circle to hollow circle. Okay, and after the ID, I would like to set up another identifier called class. Okay, so what is the meaning of a class? It is pretty similar to an ID, but we can apply the same class mentioned on this style sheet to many other parts of the same HTML file. So a class can be designated to multiple elements, and I'm going to show you this property very soon. And before that, I would like to identify part of the ordered list shown here as class 1. Class equals class 1. And if I want to specify the outlook for this class, how can I do that? I can simply go to the CSS file and type something like this. Okay, you can see that I just used a dot followed by the class name to declare or to specify the class to do the change in the outlook. So now you can see that the ordered list here will be having a color of light green as the background color. And as I told you, a class can be designated to multiple elements. Since my next paragraph is also having a class name called class 1, you can see that the paragraph here just after the ordered list will also have the light green color as the background color. And more than that, an element can be assigned to multiple classes. So when I set the block quote to be having class 1 here, I'm also able to change the outlook according to the style specified for class 1. So we can see that the block quote also has the background color being light green. And then I'm going to show you another property of class selectors. And this property is quite useful for us. And you can see from the block quote opening tag that I have two classes being included as the value of the class attribute. So I just use a space to separate two class names. Now I would have another class called class 2 just after class 1, separated by a space. And what does it mean by that? I can simply assign another style specified by class 2 to the same element. Okay, when I apply class 2 to the block quote, I'm able to set the alignment of the text to be the justified mode. Okay, so you can see that the letters are aligned on the right hand side. So this is the important property of the classes. The multiple classes can be applied to a single element. Okay, and I can also apply the same style to another element, for example this one. So I just now apply this the same class called class 2 to another element. So you can see that another paragraph is also right justified. Okay, so this is an important property again. We can apply the class to different portions of your web page. When we want to be more specific about the element to style, we can do something like this, which is known as an element specific class. So there are so many paragraphs in this HTML file, as you can see from the web page on the right hand side. If you want to just specify one paragraph to have a certain style, how can you do that? I can do something like this here. Okay, what does it mean by this dot here? This dot is going to link the element together with the class. So this selector means that you need to locate the element as follows. We need to specify the paragraph that has a class called class 2. So the monospace font family does not affect other parts of the web page. It just affects the portion specified by the paragraph that has a class name called class 2. Okay, so this is known as the element specific class. So we have finished the class selectors. The other thing to talk about is the attribute selectors shown here. So what does it mean by that? An attribute selector means that we really need to specify the attribute when we want to locate the element correctly. So now I have some input elements, and if I want to specify the input elements correctly, I need to take care of the attribute selectors issue. Okay, let me show you an example on the input elements on the right hand side of the screen. Okay, you can see that the name text box has turned to long green. I mean, the background color of the box has turned to long green. Why? When we look at the input element on the HTML file, I'm actually doing something like this. The input element is specified by the input keyword here, and for my CSS file, I'm going to locate the input element that has an attribute called ID. So this element has an attribute called ID, but the input element next to the name text box does not really have the ID attribute. So we can see that this selector is just able to help me locate the element which has the ID attribute. So only the first text box will be turned to long green, but the second text box will still remain unchanged. In addition to specifying an attribute, we can also specify the attribute value pair if we want to locate the elements very precisely. So we can see an example like this. Okay, I'm able to make this link a larger font. The reason is that when I simply go to this link, which is here, this link has an attribute value pair called target equals blank. But the other hyperlink on top of it does not really have this attribute value pair. So I'm able to locate the anchor element with this attribute value pair indicated. So I'm going to locate the link shown here very precisely without affecting the anchor element that does not have this attribute value pair. And then I can also specify the elements by using the value selector. What does it mean by that? We can see an example here. Okay, you can see that this checkbox has a very large area. So what does it mean by this large area? I just changed the checkbox size by specifying the height and the width of the checkbox. So what does it mean by this selector? Input value tilde equals graduate. We can just go to the checkbox here. I just want to change the size of the checkbox when the value is equal to graduate. So this tilde equals means that I'm able to select the value very accurately. I'm not going to select postdoc, college, below college, or no schooling, because I have to really find out the value component of an attribute value pair being graduate exactly. And in other input elements, I'm not able to find out this pattern exactly, graduate. So only this element with this pattern called graduate will be turned to a bigger checkbox size, okay? And after that, I'm going to show you the element selector with the value starting with some word. Okay, what does it mean by this selector? Input value vertical line equals below just shows that we have to find out the value component of an attribute value pair with the word below at the beginning. So when we check the input elements, I'm able to see that only this one can satisfy this condition, below average. And other input elements don't have this pattern as the beginning of the value component of an attribute value pair. And then I'm going to show you another element selector with the value starting with some characters. So let me show you an example now. Okay, we can see that the checkbox corresponding to college will be set to another checkbox size. So what does it mean by this kind of element selector? I'm going to look at the value which starts with COL. So when I check the input boxes, I'm only able to find out this one being started with COL. So I'm able to locate this one. And I'm not going to locate other input elements because none of these input elements would have some value starting with COL. Only this one will be chosen, okay? And I'm also able to denote the element selector with the value ending with some characters. So how can I do that? Okay, we can see that the checkbox corresponding to no schooling has turned to another checkbox size. The reason is that we can see that only the checkbox corresponding to no schooling would end with G, okay, and no other values would end with G when we check the other input elements, okay. Only this one will end with G. So we can simply locate the element very precisely without affecting any other unrelated elements. Finally, I'm going to show you the element selector with the value having some characters inside. So we don't need to specify the beginning characters or the ending characters. We can just specify the characters in between some words. Okay, what does it mean by that? When I simply say value star equals OST, I'm able to locate the postdoctorate level checkbox. The reason is that I'm able to find out OST here. And this pattern is not at the beginning of the value, or it is not at the far end of a certain value. So when we use the star or asterisk equals operator, I'm able to locate the value which has OST inside. So this is another way of helping me locate the elements very precisely. So we can see that there are so many selectors allowed in CSS. The element selector, ID selector, class selector, and attribute selector, together with the universal selector at the very beginning of my illustration. This is the end of the video. If you have any questions about my video, please leave your questions on the comment section below the video. If you like this video, please give me a like and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching.